6 unpleasant things you do as you age without realizing it and almost no older person notices. Have you ever stopped and wondered if your daily habits might be affecting the relationships around you? This is a question many of us, especially as we move into our 60s and 70s, often overlook. Yet, it's the small, unnoticed things that can create distance rather than connection. Imagine this. You might have once had close relationships with your children, grandchildren, friends, or neighbors, but lately, things seem to be growing more distant. Have you ever felt puzzled as to why your loved ones visit less often, conversations don't last as long, or you feel like you're not being heard? This isn't uncommon. In fact, many older adults unintentionally develop habits that make them feel lonelier, even when their original intention was the opposite. In today's video, we'll explore those unconscious actions that might be hindering your relationships with your loved ones. But don't worry, this isn't about blaming yourself. Instead, we'll focus on identifying and changing these habits to help you build stronger, more meaningful connections. Let's begin this journey together, because small changes made today can bring great joy and deeper connections tomorrow. And if you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any useful content that can help you live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Ready? Let's dive into the first point right now. 1. Indifference in everyday communication. Let's begin with something many people don't realize: indifference in daily communication. Imagine Mr. John, a 70-year-old man living in Austin, Texas, who has been retired for a few years. He used to be talkative, approachable, and the center of attention during family conversations. But lately, he often gives brief, indifferent answers and no longer initiates conversations like he used to. Perhaps Mr. John doesn't realize it, but this silence is creating an invisible distance between him and his children and grandchildren. Familiar questions like, "How was your day?" or "How's work going?" have gradually disappeared. This makes his family feel disconnected, even though he never intended it. So, why does this happen? For many older adults, indifference in communication is not intentional. It can stem from feeling that the younger generation's stories are too unfamiliar or irrelevant to them. Sometimes they might think staying silent avoids bothering others. However, this very silence leads to missed opportunities for connection. Think about it. Every small conversation is a chance to share, understand, and maintain relationships. Mr. John realized this when his grandson Ethan said to him for the first time, "Grandpa, why don't you ask me about my day anymore?" That simple remark made him understand that his silence might be misunderstood as a lack of care. So, how can this be improved? The answer is simple. Be a little more proactive. Don't hesitate to ask straightforward questions like, "How's school going?" or "What made you happy today?" These seemingly small questions hold immense power in keeping connections strong. Mr. John decided to spend each morning calling his children and grandchildren or set aside 10 minutes during dinner to chat with his wife. The results were remarkable. He felt closer to his family, and the atmosphere at home became warmer than ever. Communication is the bridge of all relationships. Don't let indifference turn loved ones into strangers. With just a little effort, you can spark meaningful conversations and bring about the connection you've always desired. 2. Constant complaining about everything. Let's move on to another habit that many older adults unintentionally fall into: constant complaining about everything. This time, let's talk about Mrs. Margaret, a 74-year-old retired teacher from Boston. Mrs. Margaret was always known in her family for being outspoken and unafraid to share her opinions. However, over time, her comments seemed to turn into a string of nonstop complaints. Imagine this. At every family gathering, Mrs. Margaret always had something to complain about, from the weather being too hot, the complications of politics, to how she couldn't understand why her grandson loved modern smartphones so much. At first, her family laughed it off, saying, "That's just Mrs. Margaret. She's always been like that." But gradually, they started feeling drained and distant. Her daughter-in-law, Julie, often found excuses to leave the dinner table, while her son, James, began cutting their phone conversations short to avoid listening to her grievances. So, why do many older adults, like Mrs. Margaret, fall into this habit? Often, constant complaining stems from feelings of loss of control, loneliness, or a sense of not being heard. In Mrs. Margaret's case, she felt like her family wasn't paying as much attention to her as they used to, and complaining became her way of asserting her presence. What she didn't realize was that this negativity only pushed her loved ones further away. How can this be changed? The key lies in replacing complaints with gratitude. When her grandson, Ben, candidly said, "Grandma, I love you, but it's hard to talk when you're always complaining," Mrs. Margaret was initially hurt, but she decided to try something new, keeping a gratitude journal. Each evening, Mrs. Margaret spent 10 minutes writing down 3 things she was grateful for that day. It could be a delicious meal, a beautiful flower in her garden, or simply her family still visiting regularly. Over time, this habit helped her shift her perspective on life. Additionally, Mrs. Margaret learned to listen more during conversations instead of jumping straight into complaints. She started asking questions like, "How's work going for you?" Or, "Is there something exciting you'd like to share with me?" This change not only made her feel more positive, but also made her family feel more comfortable around her. The takeaway is this: complaining doesn't improve situations, but gratitude can try, replacing every complaint with a compliment or an expression of appreciation. And you'll notice a difference not only in yourself, but also in how others interact with you. 3. Dominating conversations. Now let's talk about another habit that many older adults fall into: dominating conversations. Imagine the story of Mr. Frank, a 78-year-old retired professor living in Denver throughout his life. He was a man of great experience, teaching at prestigious universities, traveling extensively, and meeting some of the brightest minds in the world. His stories are fascinating. But there's one problem: he always takes over every conversation. Picture a Sunday lunch at his daughter Laura's house. When his grandson Alex excitedly shares about his new science project at school, Mr. Frank immediately interrupts. "That reminds me of a lecture I gave at Harvard." He then launches into a 15-minute story, causing Alex to lose interest and stop sharing. The atmosphere at the table becomes heavy rather than lively. Why do many older adults develop this habit? For Mr. Frank, it's his way of feeling important, heard, and valued in an ever-changing world. Many in his age group feel similarly. They don't intend to dominate, but simply want to share their knowledge and experiences. However, they may not realize that this can make others feel overwhelmed and unappreciated. The solution isn't to stop sharing, but to learn how to balance talking and listening. Mr. Frank had a turning point when his daughter Laura gently said, "Dad, we love your stories, but sometimes Alex and everyone else also want to share their thoughts." Initially, he felt hurt, but after reflecting on it, he realized she was right. At the next family meal, when Alex started talking about his project, Mr. Frank resisted the urge to interrupt. Instead, he asked, "What's the most interesting part of your project, and what do you hope to learn from this?" The change was immediate. Alex eagerly shared, and the conversation flowed naturally. After Alex finished, Mr. Frank shared a related story, and this time, everyone listened attentively. Effective communication is a two-way street. By taking the time to listen to others, you not only create opportunities for them to feel valued, but also make your stories more engaging when shared at the right moment. 4. Demanding respect than solely based on age. Now, let's address another habit that many older adults unconsciously fall into: demanding respect solely based on age. Consider the story of Mrs. Evelyn, a 76-year-old retired nurse from Atlanta. She grew up in an era where respect your elders was an unspoken rule. To her, age equated to wisdom, and she always expected her children and grandchildren to respect and follow her opinions without question. One day, at a family barbecue, her 16-year-old granddaughter Chloe shared that she wanted to pursue a creative career instead of the traditional path her family had envisioned. Mrs. Evelyn immediately responded, "In my day, we didn't do that. Children had to listen to their elders. You should follow my advice." Feeling dismissed, Chloe quietly walked away, leaving Mrs. Evelyn confused and hurt. Why does this happen? For people like Mrs. Evelyn, respecting elders was a given, ingrained from childhood and closely tied to their sense of self-worth. However, today's younger generation views respect differently. They see it as something to be earned through understanding and fair treatment rather than automatically granted based on age. This generational difference in perspective can create tension, turning one-sided expectations into barriers in relationships. So, how can this tension be resolved? The key lies in fostering mutual respect. Mrs. Evelyn learned this when her son, Mark, said, "Mom, Chloe loves and values you, but she also needs to feel that you respect her thoughts. If you listen to her, she'll be more willing to listen to you." The next time Chloe talked about her plans, Mrs. Evelyn tried a different approach. Instead of immediately giving her opinion, she asked, "What do you like most about this career, and how do you think it will help you grow?" Chloe was surprised by her grandmother's genuine interest and opened up about her ideas. The result. Not only did Chloe feel valued, but Mrs. Evelyn also felt that their relationship had grown closer. Respect is not a right, but an exchange built on understanding. When you're willing to listen and value the opinions of the younger generation, they'll be more inclined to listen to you in return, and the relationship will become stronger than ever. 5. Dismissing others' experiences. Next, let's discuss a habit that may seem harmless but can unintentionally hurt others: dismissing their experiences. This time the story is about Mr. Robert, a 72-year-old retired engineer living in Dallas. Throughout his life, he faced countless challenges and learned valuable lessons. However, sometimes these experiences led him to unintentionally downplay the struggles of younger generations. Imagine this. His granddaughter, Emily, calls to share how stressed she feels about her first job. Instead of showing empathy, Mr. Robert responds, "You think that's hard? Back in my day, I worked from dawn till dusk without time to complain." Emily falls silent, feeling as though her feelings aren't validated, and she no longer feels comfortable opening up to him. Why does this happen for people like Mr. Robert? Their intention isn't to hurt others. They believe that by comparing struggles, they're helping young people see that things aren't as bad as they think. However, this approach often backfires, making the listener feel dismissed and misunderstood. The solution lies in learning to acknowledge and empathize with others' experiences. The turning point for Mr. Robert came when he noticed Emily no longer called as often. When he asked his daughter Lisa about it, she explained, "Dad, Emily feels like you don't listen to her. She wants your support, but instead, she feels like her feelings don't matter to you." The next time Emily talked about challenges at work, Mr. Robert tried a different approach. Instead of comparing her struggles to his own, he said, "I can see you're feeling overwhelmed. Is there any way I can help you?" That simple sentence opened the door to an honest conversation where Emily felt respected and heard. Every emotion deserves to be validated. When you listen without judgment or comparison, you create a safe space for others to open up. This not only helps you understand them better, but also deepens your relationship with them. 6. Criticizing the lifestyle of younger generations. Finally, let's talk about another common habit many older adults may not realize they have: criticizing the lifestyle of younger generations. Imagine the story of Mrs. Linda, a 73-year-old living in San Francisco. She cares deeply about her family and wants the best for her children and grandchildren. However, her concern often manifests as negative comments, especially about how younger generations use technology or embrace modern lifestyles. Picture a family dinner. When she sees her grandson Ethan scrolling on his phone during the meal, Mrs. Linda remarks, "You're always glued to that phone. Back in my day, we lived just fine without technology." Ethan, feeling criticized, responds curtly, "I'm looking up materials for my school project." The atmosphere at the table becomes tense, and Ethan spends the rest of the meal in silence, leaving Mrs. Linda feeling disappointed. Why does this happen? For people like Mrs. Linda, criticism often stems from love and a desire to protect younger generations from mistakes. However, younger people often perceive this differently, as a lack of understanding and judgment. How can this be improved? The answer lies in curiosity and a willingness to learn. When Mrs. Linda's daughter, Sarah, talked to her, she said, "Mom, Ethan isn't intentionally ignoring the family, he's just working in his own way. If you ask him instead of criticizing, he'll be more willing to share." Mrs. Linda realized she needed to approach things differently. The next time Ethan was on his phone during dinner, Mrs. Linda tried a new approach. She asked, "What interesting thing are you learning from your phone? I'd love to know more." Ethan, surprised but pleased, shared about a programming app he was using. The conversation became lively, and Mrs. Linda felt truly connected to her grandson. No one likes being criticized, but everyone enjoys sharing. Instead of judging, try to understand the reasons behind someone's actions. This not only helps you gain insight, but also makes others feel respected and loved. Remember, strong relationships don't come from perfection, but from the willingness to change and learn from each other. And you can start today. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found today's insights helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving meaningful content that helps you build a more fulfilling life. See you in the next video.